Today, we observe the feast that we call Good Friday. Its centerpiece is the reading of the Passion narrative. On Palm Sunday, we heard the Good Friday Passion as told by Matthew. And today, we heard the story as recorded by John. There is, in both accounts, a moment when Jesus makes a statement that brings us to our Good Friday meditation. First, in Matthew, when Judas betrays Jesus, Jesus says, "Do you think that I cannot call upon my Father, and he will not provide me at this moment with more than 12 legions of angels?" Then, in John, after Pilate asks Jesus if he is a king, Jesus says, "My kingdom does not belong to this world. If my kingdom did belong to this world, my attendants would be fighting to keep me from being handed over to the Jews. But as it is, my kingdom is not here." The question that we're left with is, why didn't God react to the treatment of his own son the way we would have reacted if one of our children was abused so badly by their community? Why didn't Jesus simply ask for those 72,000 angels to defend him and destroy his persecutors, just like God destroyed Sodom or Gomorrah? If we look to the answer, we find one of the marvelous gifts of Easter. Jesus is God and man. When Jesus gives himself up to his tormentors, he ceases to draw on his nature that is God. He allows himself to become fully the man who must rely on God. Jesus demonstrates for us the call of his Father to join our hearts to God's will for us and for all his creation. In the article, 3 Days of Pascha, Nathan Mitchell, Professor Emeritus of the Department of Theology of Notre Dame, writes his learned opinion on what the Triduum is really all about. He writes, the days of the Triduum, celebrate not what once happened to Jesus, but what is now happening to us as a people, called to conversion, gathered in faith, and gifted with the Spirit of holiness. They celebrate God's taking possession of our hearts at our deepest core, recreating us as a new human community, broken like bread for the world's life. A community rich in compassion, steadfast in hope, and fearless in the search for justice and peace. Now, it being Good Friday, and our gospel reading filled with the torturous agony and death of Christ, ending with his burial in a tomb, one might be tempted to say, "Okay, Jesus, so how did that trust in your Father work out for you?" And we would be missing the point. Jesus being fully human, Jesus being subject to his captors, Jesus being crucified while still believing. All of this points to his trust in his Father and his Father's plan. It is a trust that we know was rewarded, as shown to us in Jesus' resurrection, and then Jesus being seated at the right hand of his Father. Good Friday calls all of us to trust in God. Jesus' life, works, example, and service are all to unite us with God, in God's love, and in God's purpose. People sometime in their life ask themselves whether they have a relationship with Jesus, ask whether they are doing God's will. A good place to begin that prayer and reflection would be to imagine ourselves as witnesses to the scene in Matthew or the conversation in John. Once we have relived that scene and recognizing at that moment Jesus makes the final commitment to follow the will of his Father, trusting in him alone, then we can pray to Jesus, praying to receive the grace to follow him and his example, called to conversion, gathered in faith, gifted with the Spirit of holiness, steadfast in our hope, and fearless in our living our life for him.